welcome to Metal Rock and Whiskey. How you guys doing?
Hey, Sailor, doing great.
Yeah, doing awesome. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm surprisingly excited to talk about the subject tonight,
I
which
can figure out why
has
you say
been
surprisingly, but
well, it's been a controversy here
yeah, I'll
at
bet.
Metal Rock and Whiskey. But let's before we get into that, let's start off the show by introducing everybody. If you guys don't know who the fuck we are, I'm Sailor. I'm here with my friend Ed and my other friend Nate, and we like to talk about music, whiskey, rock, metal, and we like to argue. We like to battle and we like to debate. And somehow it usually pisses people off, but there you have it.
There you go.
We got a few fans down under.
It's gonna piss someone off no matter what. So
Oh, and
So
guess what?
yeah, this is a special show, Ed, right?
Yes, this is a very special show. It was on this night, if I can channel Large Marge, it was a night just like tonight. Actually, 6 years ago in 2017, October the 16th to be exact, we recorded our first Metal Rock and Whiskey episode. And actually, it was more of a practice episode, but technically it was our first recording.
And what a recording it was. I am very sorry that I didn't save those older recordings. I was horrified when I went back and listened to it. And I think, Nate, we shared with you after the last recording what went down. And I
yeah,
think we've told the story a few times, so I'm not going to get too deep into it again. But you guys, we didn't quite think about the fact that we were drinking whiskey while we were talking about what we were going to talk about, which is always smart. And then we drank while we were on the show. And our recording lasted, I think, like 2 hours because we were new at this. Not to say we don't still have long shows, but by the time I think we got to like the middle of it, we were all pretty much snookered.
Yeah,
And you could tell
that
it
would have been a
was
nightmare to edit those first couple
I don't think it would
episodes,
have been
which
possible
is
to edit.
why we never, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
never
I can
saw the light of
Well,
the
only
I
day.
mean,
only
what an
imagine.
introduction. Oh
Yeah,
God. So who fell off their chair? Was that Matt? Fell
No,
off
that
his
was
chair?
Matt, definitely Matt.
Matt fell off his chair. Ed's wife um surprised him.
Kind of
And Ed
wondering
was like, I
where I
gotta
was at. It was at what 1:30 in the morning or something like that, and I hadn't come to
something like
bed
that.
yet.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like 6 hours later. And then Jake and I stayed on thinking that we were sober enough to talk about. So yeah, and then next episode we should talk about this. And I'm like, yeah, I'll take notes and I need a sandwich. I'm really hungry. I fell asleep in bed with the laptop open with half a sandwich laying next to me. Woke up. Jake was snoring on his couch. It was like 6 in the morning. We left the Zoom window open, and Matt's camera was still on in an empty kitchen because he
Uh,
went to the bathroom and never came back. We never heard from him again. So it's good times.
Humble beginnings.
Good way to start. But if you were not there back then, you might not know that we have covered Metallica several times. That is the subject that started off this entire podcast. Um, Metallica will always be my favorite metal band, no matter how I feel about them in modern times, but we're going to get there. It was really my first love in metal and thrash. And I'm definitely a thrash girl. I am old enough to have been back there, not right at the beginning, but pretty early on for them. I'm not that old. So I got to experience Metallica when that kind of music was not accepted by society, when it was not played on the radio, when this whole genre of music was really, really new. So really exciting. Was also happened at a pivotal moment in my life. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. There's been some really amazing studies that have been done on the music that you grow up with in your early to mid teens and why that music sticks with you for the rest of your life as like, oh, but that's the best time in music. There's actually science to that, but we'll talk about that. But anyway, welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to our anniversary edition, which is super exciting. Again, we are now a YouTube show. That's either a good thing or a bad thing, depending on whether you want to look at our stupid mugs. I am a very fidgety person, something I didn't know about myself until I had to be on camera all the time. So forgive me for being fidgety and having the snarfles again. It's gonna be a great show. So we did something special for this show. We decided, let's go back for a second. Our first recording that we just talked about, the recording that never made it live, there was no Metallica whiskey yet. There was no Blackened whiskey yet. Well, it wasn't on the shelves yet. We heard some rumbling shortly after we started this podcast, and we felt very cynical about it, and I think rightly so. There is a sea of celebrity spirits out there that are just not worthy of your time or money. I have a lot of opinions about celebrity spirits, and we are definitely going to talk about that. I think that in any industry, when you jump on the bandwagon for money and notoriety, fuck you. I think it's just garbage. I was really concerned that they were gonna just do the Casa Amigo thing, or the Heaven's Door thing, which sorry, I'm not into. So to our surprise, we found out that they had tapped the counterpart in whiskey to them. So who would have been considered the Metallica of whiskey at the time? That would have been Dave Pickerel. He was a very beloved master blender, a consultant and helper, and just aficionado, and a passionate man in our industry that helped so many distilleries launch in the right way.
Mhm.
One of them being down the street from Ed, our friends at Whiskey Acres. So shout out to Whiskey Acres. So many, too many to mention. So when we found that out, we got really excited. We're like, okay, this is a legitimate insider, like a real whiskey person, someone that really knows what they're doing. And then we heard they had planned to build a distillery. Then we heard that they had actually purchased stock, meaning whiskey that was already made into whiskey, and they were actually blending it in their own facility, or perhaps in a facility that's contracted out, meaning they didn't just pick something and go, yeah, let's just slap a fucking label on it. So they were really interested in the aging and the blending process. And so they did actually age their whiskey, and still do, using something really cool, which we'll talk about down the road, a proprietary way of enhancing their whiskey. So we all got excited about it. And right about the time it was hitting the shelves, I was getting married. And so I grabbed a bottle, and that was our wedding whiskey. And I have to say that I've really enjoyed the whiskey thus far. And I think it's just getting better and better, in my opinion. Sadly, we lost Dave Pickerel. So let's just raise a glass to Dave.
Oh. Rest in power, Dave.
Very sad, and did derail some of the brand's plans. Luckily for them, they were able to tap my friend and another well-respected person in the industry, Mr. Rob Dietrich, who was formerly of Stranahan's Whiskey. And Dave is now their master blender, and he is super awesome dude. I got to meet him and write about him for American Whiskey Magazine, so check out that issue. This guy is so interesting. I hope he writes his life. I hope someone gets his life story in a book, because it's fascinating. But I really think he's talented. I love what he does. I love his approach. And so we decided, since it was our anniversary show, we're going to talk about Metallica, since that's the band that started it all. And we were all going to be drinking Blackened 72 Seasons.
Yes.
So this is their latest release. I'm going to talk a little bit about the stats on it. If you have not had their whiskey, I highly recommend tasting it and trying it out. You know, to each his own. Taste is subjective. If you don't love it, you don't love it. That's fine. But I think in particular, this is a pretty fantastic bottle. So they blend North American, and it's very important, that designation, North American, straight bourbon and rye whiskey, meaning there's probably some Canadian rye in there, which is a good thing. Some of the best rye comes out of Canada. So I would do the same thing. Everything's aged to a minimum of 4 years. And then I talked a little bit about this process that they do. So they finish their whiskey in different barrels sometimes, which is awesome. A lot of times brandy barrels. And that is the case for the 72 Seasons blend. And they have a proprietary process where they say they sonically enhance their brandy casks. So they play music very well. I don't know if it's loud. I'm making an assumption here, but in a way that is kind of like strapping a subwoofer to the barrels.
Yeah, I think they basically enhance the bass notes and make sure that kind of reverberates through the rickhouse or whatever.
Hopper and Kings has been doing this for a long time. And they had some interesting things to say about the process. They made the assumption that, like, you know, deep bass music would be the best. That wasn't the case, actually, which was really interesting. So I love that they have their hands on this. It's really fun. It's fun to know what they're playing. So every release you can find out what the playlist was. So that's really cool. So yeah, so we have this really kick-ass blend of straight whiskeys finished in brandy casks, and we all got to taste it, and I'm sipping on it tonight. So before we get into the discussion about the album 72 Seasons, let's talk about the whiskey a little bit. Tell me what you think, guys.
Well, first of all, before we start, I want to say something. I'm kind of excited tonight because I think we're actually creating a new segment here as we're going.
Are we?
Is the first, I believe this is the first album and whiskey pairing we've ever done.
Well, there you
That's
go.
Isn't
one
it?
to one. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
We've
So
never
I
had
think
that
this could be
opportunity
a
before.
regular thing.
That's a great
What do
idea.
you mean? How are we going to do that?
Well, we'll find a way. If we ever get the opportunity, I think we should do this
All right.
again. But anyway,
I agree.
I like it.
Yeah.
All right.
yes. So the
Well,
whiskey.
who the fuck am I? I guess that's what we're doing.
Yeah, 2 to 3 or 2 to 1. Sorry.
That's some great math there.
It's late.
So I have had the standard Blackened before. Actually, what's the bottles behind me? I had batch 98. This one, the 72 Seasons version, this really hit me in a way that the other one didn't. I mean, this is so much different than anything else I've ever had before. First of all, the nose on this is just incredible. I spent probably literally a good 15 minutes just nosing, stepping back, doing it again, going back to it. And during that time, I was initially hit with like a honey note, a very sweet honey. And then I realized that honey kind of morphed into more like a butter rum candy. Remember those little candies, those round yellowish orange candies you used to get from your grandma and grandpa?
I was like, grandma used to have in the bowl at her house. Yeah.
Exactly.
The ones that were so hard you'd break a tooth, or you like every other kid in the world choked on one of those at some
Just a
point.
lethal dose of sugar in them. Yeah.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, so that was those were two big
Yellow
ones
number 5
right there. And as I kept nosing it, I would keep getting these little hints of different things. I got some grain in there, some cloves, some grass, and even a little bit of a funky note that kind of reminded me a little bit of the Willet pot still that I like so much. So yeah, the nose is beautiful and very complex. Like I said, if I kept, if I spend another 15 minutes, I'd probably pull, other things out of it too. But then after tasting it, this has happened before with other whiskeys. Sometimes you'll nose a whiskey and you taste it and yup, that's what I was smelling. And sometimes it's something completely different and like, what the heck? It just comes out of, and this was one of those. So like I said, I do like it. So some of these tasting, the first thing that hit me when I tasted it, this is going to sound really weird, but like a wooden pencil, like a number 2 pencil.
I know exactly
that's what I got. If you can follow me. I know it sounds weird. And then all of a sudden I was tasting and I was thinking about, man, I remember my dad used to have a cologne called English Leather Musk. And I was getting some kind of so I don't know if it was leather notes or something or some kind of a musky taste. And then I was tasting a little more. And I got sort of like a tobacco-y kind of flavor in it. And then finally, this is what kind of sold me. I started tasting like a bitter dark, like a baking chocolate in there, like a baker's chocolate. And then after having, I did similar with the nosing. I would sip it, step back for a while, think about it, come back to it. And after a little while, I'd become a fan of this. And because it's so, like I said, it's so different than anything else I've ever had. And there are some really nice flavors I can pull out of here, like that dark chocolate and a little bit of that funkiness, like I said, that kind of reminds me of the Willet pot still a bit. So yeah, so very interesting whiskey. And I'm really glad I was able to sample some of this.
I like it. You're speaking to the complexity. I definitely share that with you.
Mm-hmm.
So Nate, what do you think about this?
So I drank mine over the weekend a little bit. I had a glass, I think it was Friday night, and then a little glass Saturday night, and I had a little bit yesterday too. And I agree with a lot of what Ed said. I think the nose is super complex, and it was kind of hard for me to pick out certain distinct things. I did get kind of that honey too. And then when I tried it, it took a sec for it to like sit and swirl around a little bit because it's like, what am I tasting? And at like some points I felt like I was getting like the dark sweet almost reminded me of a fruit kind of. It was really interesting. Like I don't know what to compare it to, but it almost not like a raisin or something like that, but
like
it was
a fig, perhaps?
maybe a fig, yeah.
A
And
super
then
common brandy note. So
yeah,
I mean,
okay,
I think you're
which
right,
makes
it's
sense.
spot on there.
Yeah. And I won't go into as much length as Ed did, but it's very good. I could drink it again. It definitely grows on you. The first couple sips, it's a lot to take in. But man, I would absolutely get another bottle. So if I ever see it out there, I'll have to do that.
You guys make great points, and I'm gonna agree with you guys on most everything. So I was telling Ed before we started recording, I think I have 10 different bottles. So I am very familiar with the flavors of Blackened whiskey. I've held a few tastings. So I poured it a lot at the whiskey library and the Mermaid Bar. So I'm really familiar with it, and that absolutely changes your experience. I know the profile now quite well. I'm no expert at it. So I don't think it shocks me as much, the new expressions, because I'm getting so accustomed to their style. But I will say this whiskey is very distinct. And I believe that's what they're going for, is that distinction. It's kind of what I gathered in speaking with Rob, on and off the record, is that they are looking for something that is going to strike you as, whoa, what is this? They're not going for this very smooth, very palatable, easy to drink whiskey. They're looking for something really different and special and unique and just right there in your face. They're Metallica. They should be.
They fucking killed it then. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
exactly what they wanted
you.
to. Yeah. Absolutely.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
I used to drink a fuck ton of brandy. When I lived in Europe, it's really common to have a brandy after dinner, or just, hey, do you want to have a brandy? So I lived in France. I happen to have a lot of experience drinking brandy. So I tend to get a lot of the brandy notes out of whiskey that is finished in brandy casks. So I think I probably lean a little too much into those notes because I think I'm subconsciously always looking for that brandy. So I try to not include those notes as much, but I got fig all over the place, Nate. So
Okay.
I agree with you there. On the nose, I got a lot of burnt caramel, a ton of oak, and honey. I got that like wet, the funky that you talked about, Ed,
Mm-hmm.
like musty funky. Like
Mm-hmm.
I believe if you are finishing in an old barrel, especially something that's a long age product like a brandy, you better get some funk and some must. Otherwise, I don't know what the fuck you're doing or how long that shit was aged,
Yeah, you want some
I,
age in there, some experience. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I love that old funky musty, if that's what I don't know. I
Mm-hmm.
really like that profile. On the palate, if I separate all of that brandy with it and I'm focusing on the whiskey, I got a ton of warm honey and cinnamon and allspice. Thought there were lots of cloves in this. And I didn't get as much as the mintiness that I was expecting to get. I think it was more the fruit definitely comes through like mid palate, like halfway through, you start all of a sudden getting that fruit. And I think fruit is big on the finish. And I think this has maybe one of the longest finishes other than the Wes Henderson, which is phenomenal as well. Because I think that one's the aged in port wine casks.
Okay.
I think this is probably one of their longest finishes. That butterscotch, I'm right there with you guys. Maple, I get tons of maple as well. And that honey comes back through, lots of sweetness, which again, it's aged in a brandy cask. I think that goes territory. But this whiskey is so unique. It's so complex. And I think that speaks to the talent of Rob. That's what he's looking for. He's looking for this to stand out and be really complex. So one of the things I always suggest to people in tastings when I include this in a tasting or do a flight of Blackened is just sit with it for a bit. This is like any whiskey that is complex and assertive. Don't just take a sip of it and go, oh yeah, I don't really like this. That's no way to taste anything, actually. You might even need a second glass. You might need to do it at another time. I think we've talked about this on the show, Ed, a long time ago. I will taste things at different times of the day and there's so much involved. So your emotional well-being at the time, that's a real thing. If you're sad, it can deaden your palate. This is the truth. If you're pissed off, if you're stressed out and you've had a bad day, your senses are dulled, right? And sometimes you need to just think about it. What am I tasting? What's happening in my mouth here? What am I smelling?
And actually, I kind of did that a little bit because when I first received the sample bottle, I did take an initial taste and then just kind of let's let it be, just a simple little taste, let it be. Then another couple days later, took another sip, kept mental notes, think about it. And then it was earlier today when I sit down and did my really serious thinking about it and writing things down, tasting. So, but I kept those other things in the back of my mind, the things I tasted before. So I do agree that is a good way to approach it. Trying it different times of the day because what you have for dinner or lunch or whatever could affect it. The odor on your hand. I had to go wash my hands because I was picking up something weird and I realized that I had onion on my hand from handling raw onion and
Jesus.
holding my glass with it. And I was like, I gotta go wash my hands, get that odor
onion?
off of there, and come back. I didn't necessarily smell it in the whiskey, but I just didn't want. I wanted to make sure that didn't throw me off.
I don't think I've ever had onion and whiskey, so
You should never get onion and
I was gonna
chili.
Sam,
say.
I think
fucking hope not.
That's probably
I
not good.
did. I don't know if I mentioned clove or not. I know you mentioned
Mhm.
big clove in
Yeah.
there, but I did
Yeah.
have that in my notes. I think I forgot to mention I did pick the clove
I had it
in
in
there
mind
for
too.
sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things is, especially depending on who, if I know the person who's blending the whiskey I'm drinking, or if I am very familiar with their blending style and what they're putting out, I love to see if I can match up with their notes. So typically, if you go on a producer's website, hopefully when you see like X bottle and then it has the profile of it and it has all the nose, the palate, the finish, all the tasting notes, that came from the person who is responsible for making the whiskey, the master blender, the distiller, whoever, the blender. So I really like to see how close. So I won't look at those until I taste the whiskey myself and see how my notes lined up with theirs. And I have to say, like, I think there's, of course, taste is very subjective, and we say this all the time, but there's an intention. So, the blender is saying, I hope people, I'm tasting XYZ, or I want to blend something that tastes XYZ. And then you hope other people get that. And I got to say, I'm pretty much most of the time, my tasting notes are on par with Rob's notes, which is super fun. So all in all, you've got 45% ABV, 90 proof. This bottle is not very expensive. I love that they're keeping the price of their whiskey affordable. I want to give a big fucking shout out to Metallica for that. I want to give a big shout out to everyone involved in making this whiskey. They could very well, I know what's in this bottle, they could charge a lot more for it. They don't fucking need the money. I'm sorry, I'm just going to be frank about it. I would not be a fan of this whiskey if they were gouging it. I don't think, unless you are a very small distillery and, everything you're putting into this whiskey is so expensive, and the price of commodities are outrageous right now. Every distillery is struggling with the cost of just literally everything. So I get it, but hats off to them for making their whiskey affordable. I really appreciate that. Go grab this bottle. It's available at most major outlets. Always support your local small liquor stores first. You can order it online as well. I gotta say, I think you'll really enjoy it. Spend time with it and listen to 72 Seasons while you're sipping on it.
Exactly.
So that's what I
And
did.
you said it was affordable. I don't think you gave an exact price point, but yeah, I've seen it anywhere from like
40
40,
something,
45 to
38
$50 in
45.
that
Yeah,
range.
exactly.
Yeah.
I
So
think
which
it was
is
even lower than
very
that.
good for a really good whiskey. That's a great price
Yeah.
point.
Yes. I mean, to me, this is a premium experience because of the complexity and the uniqueness of it, which I find is a big part of what should be driving price, in my opinion, when it comes to whiskey. So we are not, by the way, we are not sponsored. This show is not sponsored by Blackened. We weren't given any free bottles. This is, I purchased this bottle. No one's paying us to say this shit. That is always the case if you're new to Metal Rock and Whiskey for us. So we've had the whiskey. Let's talk about the music. Drum roll.
Where's Lars?
That was a bad drum roll. I'm not a drummer, so sorry. All right, so Ed, I think we were on the phone one day and you said, oh, by the way, oh no, maybe you were talking to Robin.
I remember this.
You were talking to Robin.
Yep.
And you're like, have you guys listened to 72 Seasons yet? And I'm just like, I can't fucking believe he's asking that. Well, you were on the phone with Robin.
The nerve.
I was like, I can't believe he thinks I'm going to listen to a new Metallica album. So, quick backstory. The last album that I purchased happily from Metallica was And Justice for All, which is, terrible production. After that, no thank you, ma'am. Just never did it for me. Saint Anger was coming out and I thought, all right, I was reading reviews and I'm like, oh, okay, damn, maybe they're finally back. Maybe they're done with all this, whatever the crap has been going on. So I'm going to go out and get Saint Anger. This has got to be, they finally returned to their roots and their sound. Oh my God. Fuck that. That was the biggest horseshit, horrific. I was so, talk about Saint anger. I had Saint anger
Oh man.
after spending money on that fucking thing. I was so pissed. I was so mad. I wanted to write a very sternly worded letter and shake my finger in my front yard and say, get the fuck off my lawn with this crap. Horrified, you guys. I hated it.
Yeah, that was a
Hated it.
very I would still consider it an experimental album because they were doing stuff that they'd never done before and have never done since.
Just totally out of their wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just wasn't into anything else they made before that either, and really haven't been into so much anything else they made after. We've talked about this. Go listen to our past episodes. We've talked about this ad nauseum. I'm not going to go into it now. So Ed's saying this, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to get fucking open my Spotify and listen to this fucking shit and see what he's talking about. I can tell in 5 seconds if I'm going to like it. And I was like, oh, huh. Interesting. But I'm going to let you guys go first.
Okay. Do you want to go first?
Let me set up the album
Nate,
first.
Okay.
Okay.
Nate, but let me set it up first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Before we go into it. Just if people don't know, 72 Seasons is Metallica's 11th studio album. It was released in April of this year. And it's the second release on their own record label called Blackened Recordings. Also good for them for having their own record label. Fuck record labels. Fuck movie studios. Fuck Netflix. Raising my fist with the writers and the actors and the auto workers and anyone else who wants to strike. Fuck yeah. Anyway, this album was produced by Greg Fieldman, and he produced the band's previous studio album, Hardwired to Self-Destruct. His resume is nuts. So he's a frequent collaborator of Rick Rubin, and he's worked with everybody: Black Sabbath and Slipknot and Red Hot Chili Peppers and Bush and Audioslave and Marilyn Manson and Slayer and on and on and on. I mean, he knows what he's doing. So the album got positive reviews from critics. I don't really give a fuck, but just thought I'd put that in there. Most of them praised Hetfield's lyrics and his vocal performance on this record, but lots and lots of criticisms about the length of the album, which I think is fucking stupid because we have digital music. Who the fuck gives a crap anymore about the length of anything?
77 minutes, I think. Something like that.
Yes.
Which doesn't sound like, it really doesn't sound like, I mean, when you think about long albums, I mean, I don't know.
It's just shit, like you have to say something negative. Also, they were like, so I've read a lot of shit about the song Inamorata, which runs for over 11
Longest
minutes.
song ever. Their new record. But yeah,
it's like digital music. Who gives a shit? You could have a 10-hour album now. It doesn't matter anymore. Like, get off this crap.
Kind of takes me back to the Injustice for All days.
Yes. Well, also Queen, when we covered Queen, and they were like, okay, now you guys are getting popular. The most important thing you can do is have short songs, radio-friendly songs. And they were like, yeah, here's an album with 10-hour songs. It was like,
which is interesting,
their biggest hit.
Because the first single they released off this album is Lux Eterna, which is the shortest and most radio friendly.
Of course. They were probably forced into that.
But
so, all right. So I just wanted to set up the vital stats on the album. Nate, it's all you.
So I've listened to the whole album a couple times in the past few weeks, and I went back and listened to like Master of Puppets and stuff like that. I was never huge. I'm gonna make you sign an affidavit, Sailor, so you can't yell at me this whole episode. And I went back and listened to Master of Puppets. I've never been a huge Metallica fan. They came out a little before me, and I heard bits and pieces of them throughout high school and stuff like that, but it just never really clicked for me until, in the past couple of years, I started listening to it a little bit more, and I'm actually I like them. And I didn't have a lot to compare this album to, I guess, and so I went in, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and like, okay, well, let's see what they have to offer. And There's some songs on here I really like. I guess I like it overall. There's a couple songs. One of them is called "If Darkness Had a Sun" that really sticks out to me. I like that one a lot. Even the title track "72 Seasons" is good. "Shadows Follow" is good. It's just, it seems kind of more like it's old, like kind of raw old Metallica. That's what it sound. That's why I wanted to go back and listen to like Master of Puppets and things like that. It was like, do these sound similar? And they did. They sound more similar to me than some of the other stuff I've heard in recent years, shit that they've put out, the past 10, 15 years. Couple comments. I don't know what they did with Lars's kit, if they had microphones all over the place or what, but his drumming sticks out throughout the whole album. It's so
Mm-hmm.
loud and clear. It's like sometimes that's like the only thing I could focus on was Lars's drumming. And then, guitars, and then James would cut it or start in and stuff, and it was good. It's just not really a complaint, it's more of just an observation, I guess. That's really the big one. I don't have any issues with the album length. I mean, like we said, 77 minutes, and that's not shit. I mean, really. I mean, there's great songs that are 5-6 minutes long, and they're, it's an entire album of that. So, yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on the production of this album. It was very good. And if we could go back and have the producer just redo "And Justice for All" like this, I would be a happy man.
I agree.
Yeah. So yeah, this album is a bit of a marathon. I mean, it's a commitment to sit there, and you better be on a road trip or something like that. Which is like the first time I listened to it from beginning to end, I was driving somewhere at a long trip to go. But I can't. My first initial, I may have changed my mind a little bit, but my first initial listening of this album, I feel like this is a natural continuation from Hardwired, and they almost seem like two sides of the same coin to me, very similar. And Sailor, I'm thinking you should go back and give Hardwired another chance.
Mm-mm.
Because
You've already made me do that twice, and I'm not doing it again.
All right,
Oh,
fair
you've done
enough.
it twice
Fair
already?
enough.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay.
But some things I was observing was there's one song, which one was it? "Crown of Barbed Wire" specifically had a very Death Magnetic sound to it. To me, I could have seen it coming off that album. And another one was song that stood out was the "Screaming Suicide" song, which naturally makes you think of "Fade to Black." But unlike "Fade to Black," that basically, everything was hopeless, there was no redemption or anything in that song, this one actually offers a bit of hope in it. And I think James did that on purpose. He needed something. I heard an interview with him talking about it, and he did want to put a little bit of a positive message to it, probably because of some of the stuff he'd been through. He's been through some very dark places and stuff in his life. But other songs that stood out, of course, the Lux Eterna, 72 Seasons. By the time "If Darkness Had a Sun," Nate, I agree, that's a great one too. Once you get, after you get to 9, the last, I think it has to do with the, between my ADHD and the length of the album. By the time you get to 10, 11, 12, you're kind of it just kind of all sorts of is like more of the, it doesn't really, those songs really don't stand out.
Yeah, it kind of
Like
blends
the
together
others,
a
like
little
all
bit.
kind of blend together a bit. Yeah. So I need to go back and I want to purposely just listen to some of those songs individually more, and I can get more out of them than you like I said, going from beginning to end, this album, it's great, a great album from beginning to end, but it's a big commitment. 77 minutes. So yeah, so those are my thoughts.
So there's a few things I want to say about this album. Everybody has to bitch about Metallica's production, whether it's good or bad. There's always going to be like strong comments on it. And I'm with you, Nate. The first thing I noticed was the drumming. I was like, what is it about the drums that are bothering me? They
Yeah.
don't sound bad, but I couldn't put my finger on it for so long. So, one of my favorite places to read about music is on pitchfork.com. If you're not familiar, go to Pitchfork. I just think it has like the most balanced reviews that are, they're not afraid, the writers on Pitchfork are not afraid to celebrate music, which is so nice because I feel like music reviews, I mean, critics are just such pompous dickhead assholes. You know, I just don't think reviews are balanced anymore. They either shit all over something or it's like the best thing ever. But I think Pitchfork does a great job, and Andy Cush, to be in specific, he does a really great job. And so luckily for me, he was the one that reviewed this album. And I just want to read you an excerpt. Speaking of the drums. So he says, and quote, "Of course, it wouldn't be a new Metallica album without a gripe about the production." I would have to agree. For 72 seasons, one potential issue is the drums. And he says, bear with me here, sound too good. Too precise, really, with every snare thwacking and kick thumping at exactly the same volume, with exactly the same articulation, all at a tempo so locked in, it seems inhuman. He says, I wondered almost as soon as I turned it on with the hi-hat on the opening title track, ticking along like a literal metronome, whether there might have been some drum programming involved. So he said, I turned to Reddit and found several fans debating the same question. Which is very interesting. So of course things can be too perfect and they just seem weird to us because we can detect. So I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole on shit like this, like how human beings detect perfection and imperfection and the science to that, and the like there's a thing in our brains about things that look too perfect or sound or feel like this perfection. Same thing with flavor, like we talk about umami all the time, which is supposed to be like the extra unicorn flavor of all the flavors together in perfect harmony. That umami can sometimes overload our brains, and so we don't understand the amazingness that's happening in our mouths, so we just freak out and go, what the fuck am I tasting? That's kind of what happened with this drumming. So I thought that was really interesting, and it was an interesting rabbit hole. So before I go into my feelings about it, let me just talk a little bit about how this album came to be. So there's some funny things that happened here. The band has publicly talked about how how Lars and Hetfield have allowed other people to bring their ideas to the table. There's a little bit of a fucking, I don't know what you want to call it, fascist regime there for a while with the music, that no one else was allowed to do any writing for it or give any creative influence, which I can't imagine how stifling that must have been for so long. But they've all grown up, they were super young, that's okay, and matured, and they allow more creative integration. So the funny thing that I think is I was reading an interview with Kirk, and he said the band had tentative plans to enter the studio after the conclusion of the World Wired tour. And he said, we're in our third year since Hardwired, so maybe we can get a bit more focus and go into the studio a bit sooner. That was the plan. So, having not contributed any writing to Hardwire after accidentally losing his phone containing riff ideas in the Copenhagen airport in 2015, Hammett said regarding his ideas for the new album, I have a ton of material. I've overcompensated, so I'm ready to go at any time. Do we think this is a true story?
Can't imagine finding Kirk Hammett's phone in an airport. That'd be interesting.
Imagine fucking finding that thing would be a gold mine.
Yeah.
I'd feel really bad. I would send it back to him, but I'd listen to shit and look at text messages first.
See what he's up to.
Lose your phone. So let's fast forward to April 2020 during the pandemic. Lars said that they decided that they were going to work on this album during quarantine. They're super smart. So they were communicating every week. They were writing separately, and then they were able to get together. And then it was like 4 weeks of really, really serious writing. And they got to the recording, and by January of 2021, it was tough. Basically, they had a great start, and then it became really, really challenging to get this album out. But they got the album out. I think that this is an excellent way to try and return to their thrash roots. I definitely finally feel that for the first time ever, I think, since And Justice for All, because I think the Black Album, we've talked about this before, is such a departure. It was such a departure that I was like, I don't even understand who I'm listening to and what's happening here. So I think if they have tried in the past, it hasn't done it for me. It wasn't good. It wasn't right for me. This was a much better return, to those roots. If I didn't already know Metallica, I think I would very much love this album. I think I would definitely say, oh, I really like this band. I discovered this band, and this is a great album. I would be disappointed if I listened to their other music unless I went all the way back, but I would definitely like this band. So that's a big deal coming from me. I think that the writing is probably some of the best that I think they've done in a long time. I think also thematically, Hetfield has always, I think he's always been an excellent writer, an excellent lyricist, especially being so young, like his subjects and the nature of his subjects. I've heard them called juvenile in the past, and I think that's just such a slight, and I totally disagree with that. Even the albums that I don't like, I'm always impressed at his writing. I think he could have had a career outside of music if this didn't happen for him. I think he would have been an excellent novelist or screenwriter. He does a really great job shaping themes and stories, and this is no different. I think that what's missing for me is the rawness, that raw nature. I would love to hear them do this album a little bit, what do I want to say? A little bit more unplugged, a little bit less computerized, a little bit more I don't know I had a hard time figuring out how to articulate what I'm trying to say, but it's just a little too perfect and polished and clean, and I just want some of that organic grit back in there. And I just want a little bit more of a rounded sound in the instruments as well. That just talking about the perfection of the drums, it's a little bit too much of that for me in the whole thing.
It'd be interesting to see. I don't know if you've listened to any of these songs performed live. Maybe that might be a little more in your wheelhouse.
Sure. It depends on who's recording the live, because that can sound like hot garbage too. I think maybe their next album, they'll take these notes on the cleanliness of the production and the perfection and tone that down a little bit, and maybe we could get another perfect album out of them. I think it's this, they got damn close here. They really, really did. I have listened to several of the songs several times since, I think it was, I guess it was April. It must have been right when they released it is when we talked to you. It was early April. Yeah. So I have listened to it some songs quite a bit since then. It's a big deal for me because I won't touch, like I said, I don't touch anything after Master of Puppets. I don't even I just have my own playlist. So I'm impressed. I will actually say.
Wow.
I'm impressed.
That is a glowing review.
Passing out everywhere. Yes. It was super fun to drink the whiskey and listen to the album, of course. I love that. I did that we got a box set, maybe it was 2020 actually, I think. We got the box set, and I have the vinyl records of whatever release. I can't remember now what release that was. I always go on the website and I look at what the playlist is. and I'll take the songs I like from that playlist and listen to it
Nice.
very carefully. But here's what I'm gonna end with is I think they're on the right path, but I'm worried, I'm scared, I'm apprehensive. I hope this is the direction they want to continue going in for as long as they want to continue making music. I hope they felt like this was fun for them again and natural for them again. I just really want them to do better with the production. I just want it to be not a little, I want it to be a lot more organic. And I need that grit in there. I want that warmth of the sound as well. And not for it to not be so clean. That's really my biggest criticism is just
I
the
can see
cleanliness.
that, and yeah, I would tend to agree a little more that rawness in there would, I think, put this album over the top. As much as I like it, I think that would be
I think so
improvement.
too. I
You know,
think it would have ignited all the old school fans that haven't been impressed with their new shit.
yeah, but it's funny because in my Metallica journey, I started out in must have been in 88 or 89. I think it was 88 that I was first introduced to, well, it was a new album then, and Justice for All. So that was my first real exposure to Metallica. So when I came into it, that was it. And that had always been my favorite album for years and years, even though I went back and listened to Lightning and, you know, Puppets and all the other albums. And of course,
Couplets.
Black Album came along, Puppets. Inside joke. But yeah, but I started listening to Kill 'Em All, and something about that album just grabbed me. The more I listened to it, the more I like it, until it got to be that thing that for a while there, that became replaced, and Justice for All is my favorite Metallica album, surprisingly enough.
We've had some knockdown, drag out arguments about this in the past.
I was gonna ask if you guys were gonna start yelling at each other. I'll stay out of it.
But, and I'm sure it'll change again sometime, because yeah, as you mature as a listener and your tastes change over the course.
Yeah, but
so similar with whiskeys,
I mean,
albums.
come on, you can't think And Justice for All is your favorite. But anyway, let's talk about one little one little thing. I mentioned in the opening loving the music from your teenage years and why that's a thing. So I am definitely one of these people that has a hard time when my favorite musicians from my teenage years make new music. I typically won't like it, even though I want to, because I'm looking for a return to that sound. And I've acknowledged in the past that that is a wrong thinking. You know, that every artist should evolve and change and grow. And, you know, believe me, I get it. So I did a little bit of research. And apparently there are biological and hormonal changes that help boost the effectiveness of our memories during our teenage years. So it's been shown in studies that when people are asked to choose their favorite record, it's likely to come from the reminiscent bump period, and that older adults know more about their music from their youth than current pop songs. Pop meaning popular. So why is it that you're like, oh, these kids these days listen to this, whatever? I got to that age finally. I think it was last year's Grammys or the one before. I literally texted my friend Lori, who has a teenage daughter, and said, I don't even know how to pronounce anybody's name. I don't know. Is this Braille? Like, I don't understand what's happening. I looked at the winners, and it's like people with dollar signs and like a letter, a number. I'm like, is this fucking code? So the old people don't know what they're talking about. Not only who are these people, but what the fuck is this writing? I can't even read it. I can't pronounce it. And then I listen to the music and I'm like, what the fuck is this? It's garbage. It's like all auto-tune. I don't even understand. I read the lyrics. I'm like, it's not even good writing. Like, I can't even, like, at least I could go, oh, well, that's a really well written song. Like, wow. Okay, I'm generalizing. I get that. But beyond that, I just don't get it. I am definitely that old person that says I don't get most of the new music and the new sounds. I don't fucking understand it. So apparently there is a reason for that. So it makes me feel better that I'm just not an old cranky fucker.
Get some validation. So there you go.
It absolutely. So music is very closely linked with memory and emotion. So general psychological research has shown that autobiographical memories, life experiences from certain time periods are remembered better than others. And that's what's called that reminiscent bump. And so apparently it's 10 to 20 or 25 is when you're in this heightened period. And if you want to get a little bit close up in there, you're looking at like your 11, 12 to like 18, 19 period. So that's your biggest hormonal changes. So it makes sense, right? So I just think it's so interesting that it's a hormonal, there is science to this. So when you say, oh, I don't like this band anymore, this, because it's always blown me away, these people that are like, oh, I'm 70 years old and I'm still seeing, like, okay, let's say the Rolling Stones. Who the fuck? I don't understand. Like, I know people that are like, oh yeah, I went and saw them in the 60s and I'm still buying every album and going to their shows. I'm like, you still like their music? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, I don't fucking understand. I don't get it.
I know it seems like Iron Maiden has been putting out, for instance, they put out new, I mean, they just put out a new album a year or two ago, and they keep coming out with singles and stuff like that. And I've tried, I can't do it. I give it a shot, and it just doesn't hit like the old stuff did. Going to see them live, you're guaranteed to get some of the shit you like. So that, there's always that. But
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a good
Judas
point.
Priest just put out a single. I haven't listened to it yet, but and then Bruce Dickinson is going to be putting out some of his own stuff too. So I don't know. I might give it a shot
Good
and
luck, my
see.
friend.
Yeah, thanks. I'm gonna need it. See how it goes. But yeah, it's so far nothing has jumped out at me like it did, growing up on it. So, and then kind of going back to your point with your friend's daughter, my stepson, when he was 13, 14, he would show me some of the music he was listening to, and it's like, dude, I don't know what the fuck this is. I mean,
Exactly.
it's like, I'm glad you enjoy it, because I mean, I listened to Cradle of
Yeah.
Filth and stuff like that in my teenage years, and I'm sure my
Yeah.
parents hated it, so it's like I
Oh
have
yeah.
no room to judge. And every once in a while there will be a song that maybe has a cool beat or something like that. The writing is never good. Yeah, we're on the same boat. So I guess that's my point.
I think it's relegated a lot also to mainstream music, because there's still rock, there's still kids in garages, and I mean, that's I want to make sure I'm separating that. But with my nephew, who I think is the same age as your stepson, when I moved to Idaho and we would all be in the car, I'd be like, okay, everybody gets to pick one song, and and then I'll pick a song. So it's three of them and me. And so we had they're all 2 years apart. And they're all in music listening ages. So first it was like this silly song, I can't even remember, about drinking beer. It's like a country song. It was very funny. Okay, that's funny. And then it turns out, oh, this is what grandpa listens to when we go fishing. I'm like, all right, next time choose something you really like. What do you listen to? And so I was like, I really want to understand this because I want to connect with these kids. And I don't want them to think I'm this old fuddy-duddy. Like, I have to be the cool aunt. I think we did about 2 car trips like that. And I was like, all right, you guys, you're going to start learning about my music. Like, this is going to be an
lost
education.
privileges.
I was like, you're fucking done. You guys are done. So I was like, okay, here is I was like, okay, this is Metallica, this is Ozzy Osbourne, this is, I get like Megadeth, everybody. And so then I would say, of the music I play you guys now get to pick which song or which band you want to listen to when we go. And I'm thinking, they didn't remember jack shit, right? All of them in unison were like Ace of Spades.
Oh, good choice.
I know.
Nice.
I didn't turn anyone into a metalhead, unfortunately. That's my sister's fault, not mine. But yeah, what the fuck, man? What, like, literally, I'm gonna Google it right now. The Grammy winners. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Some of these artists.
Well, if you're talking about like top 40 radio nowadays, the stuff that's popular that wins awards, no, I don't, not familiar. I'm familiar with newer metal and hard rock, like Unleash the Archers, Black Veil Brides, bands like that. But as far as what makes mainstream mute, no,
I
none of
don't
that. I
understand
don't
any.
know any of that stuff.
Yeah, I don't. I don't understand why everybody's names aren't a name. Now I really sound like an old person.
It's okay. It's kind of what it's
like,
turned into, but it's all right.
yeah, the numbers and the signs and the this and the that, and then when I listen to the music, I'm
It all
I'm
started
like,
with
all right,
Kesha. We can blame her.
is that what started it?
Could be.
I don't even
I
know if I've
did,
ever
She had
listened
she
to
had
her
the dollar
music.
sign as the S in her name.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all your fault. Jesus Christ.
If I really
Yeah, I
want
don't
to
get it.
if I really want to piss off my we have students that work with us at the university, and if I really want to piss them off, I'll mispronounce a name. So I think I called Doja Cat Toga Cat the other day. Oh boy, didn't go over well, but it was really funny. I thought it was hilarious, but
This
yeah.
is another, again, like Doja Cat. I don't get it.
Yeah.
I look at her, I don't get it. I will say though, the one thing I do like about modern music is I love the artistry of everybody's persona. I will give the kids that. I think they're definitely in a more accepting world on that front. It certainly was not, yes, the men looked like ladies in the 80s, but in a very specific way. But I think
Big hair.
big hair and like you still, I don't know, it was just a little different.
We
but
had Boy George for crying out loud.
That's true.
we certainly did. He wasn't, really accepted in certain circles. And by no means is everything fixed now, but I mean, if you look up Doja Cat and oh my god, like her outfits, like Lady Gaga, she's very much
Yeah.
in that. But even with the guys, like I will give my hat to that. Like hats off to them for that. The creativity of their whole persona and their look and their theme and what's the kid who, oh god, there's another
Well,
kid
Madonna
who,
was kind of a pioneer of that, really evolving her style and her
and Cyndi Lauper, don't
her
forget
Cyndi
Cyndi
Lauper, yeah.
Lauper.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think that these kids grew up with Lady Gaga, so I think that's what they're trying to attain, that ultimate. And Bjork, think about when Lady Gaga starts coming out. Bjork is like way out there on her crazy shit, which
she's got a dead goose wrapped around her neck.
Well, the album cover with all the rings on her neck, and just crazy shit. But I love that about her. I love that. So I guess I hoped their music would be like that, would be really expressive and unique and different. So I wonder if they're in a world that's very much like, well, everything's been done, because we go through that in history. So I wonder if that is maybe why they're so expressive with their personas and not so expressive with their music. Because a lot of the stuff I hear is very similar, whether I like it or not and get it, doesn't matter. It's all very similar. I think it's difficult to tell some of these artists from each other. Not to say that doesn't happen, of course, but I would think by now and by looking at them, their unique expressiveness doesn't really exist. And then there's Taylor Swift. It's like, is about as white fucking toast as you can get. Watered down version of apple pie. And she's like the most popular artist on the planet. Like she's giving Beyonce run for her money, and I'm just
Oh,
like,
I have 4 daughters, so
why?
I know all about
Oh yeah,
Taylor.
yeah.
Christ, I don't get it. I don't know.
Anyway, but that's
I
another.
don't know. That's
a whole other can of
fucking
worms.
podcast.
Yeah.
Christ. So, all
right.
right, let's wrap it up. So, moral of the story is, yes, I like a Metallica album again.
Yay!
I like
Good
the
for
whiskey
you.
better.
You're growing.
I'm growing. Yay. Good job, Metallica. I guess we can't say fuck you, Lars, anymore at the end of the show.
I listened to an interview with him a few weeks ago on another podcast. He's an interesting guy.
He is. He's very
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah.
Very.
I didn't know he
His
was
life,
he was
his
supposed to
life
be like
story
he
is
was going
interesting, too.
into a tennis. He was supposed to be like a pro tennis player
Oh,
or something
yeah.
like that. Like
Mhm.
his whole family's pro tennis players. So
Oh, his dad.
interesting.
So you must have missed all the old jokes years ago on the podcast.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I heard
his
you guys have told me a couple of them. So
I think it's he does a good job of being very comical when he talks about being so good at the sport and then getting here and he's like, oh fuck, I suck at this.
yeah.
In his own words, it's much funnier.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that's the show. Thank you guys for
Cool.
showing up. Thanks everybody for listening. I don't know what we're gonna do next, but stay tuned for whatever the fuck it is we're gonna do next. It's fun to be back, Nate. It's really awesome to have you with us.
Yeah, it's awesome to be here. I love it. It's great.
And click subscribe and make sure you like our shit. Otherwise, I'll find you. I'll hunt you down and I don't know, give you a big hug or something, punch you in the face. You never know. You can follow us on the socials. I'm Sailor Guevara on the Instagrams. Nate?
No, go ahead.
Mine is Nate_Arsenal87 on Instagram, and then just Nate Weber on Facebook.
And they
Ed?
can find me at Bourbon Geek on Instagram.
Awesome. All right. Well, cheers, you guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.